welcome to a brand new episode of Law and Batting Order. I'm your host, Tony Oyakostas. Be sure to tune in at the end of this video for some special news I'd like to share with you all. Here are some quick hits from the past 2 weeks. The London Olympics are slowly winding down, but many athletes left with medals around their necks. American swimmer Michael Phelps escaped with more medals in this year's Summer Olympics, adding his grand total of medals to 22, thus making him the most decorated Olympian ever. Also, 16-year-old U.S. gymnast Gabby Douglas earned her first gold medal in the women's individual all-around gymnastics final. The U.S. women's national soccer team also sought redemption and beat Japan in the gold match final after Japan defeated the U.S. women's team in the 2011 Women's World Cup final. Jamaican runner Usain Bolt also won 2 gold medals after winning the men's 100-meter and 200-meter track matches. And finally, the U.S. men's basketball team will face Spain in the basketball gold match final on Sunday. And at the rate the U.S. basketball team has been going, a gold medal would not be a surprise. The city of Orlando can rest easy as Dwight Howard is no longer in an Orlando Magic uniform. After whining for months that he did not want to stay with the Magic, Orlando struck a 4-team deal with the Lakers, 76ers, and Nuggets that sends Superman to Los Angeles. He'll be joining forces with an already potent squad consisting of Pau Gasol, Kobe Bryant, and the recently signed Steve Nash. The Nuggets received Sixers star Andre Iguodala, and the Sixers received former Lakers center Andrew Bynum. The Magic received a plethora of rising stars and prospects and numerous draft picks. Tyrann Mathieu, one of Louisiana State University's top football players last year, was dismissed from the Tigers after it was revealed that he violated LSU's substance abuse policy for athletes. This is not the first time that Mathieu has been punished for drug use. Last season, he was suspended for a game after failing a drug test. Mathieu is expected to transfer to a different school and hopefully correct his image as one of the most elite young cornerbacks in college football. Today's Order in the Court will be discussing the ongoing concussion litigation that we have seen with former NFL players this offseason. For today's episode, I have the distinct honor and privilege of interviewing the one and only Paul D. Anderson, who graduated from the University of Missouri Kansas City School of Law. And if you're part of the sports law community, you know him to be the founder and author of the highly renowned blog, NFLConcussionLitigation.com. And for me, I can only relate him to Alan Schwartz from New York Times, but in my opinion, and I might sound biased saying it, but he might be better than Mr. Schwartz. But Paul, welcome to the program. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Tony. Thanks for that nice intro. That's way too kind.
Thank you. And before we dive into the topic, as I mentioned, Paul just graduated from law school, and I do want to congratulate Paul on air for completing 3 successful years. And also, you just took the bar exam about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. So for any of our viewers out there who are approaching their 3rd year or who may be taking the bar exam sometime in the future, any words of wisdom that you want to impart to them or share with them?
Yeah, well, I guess just enjoy law school because that summer studying for the bar exam is horrible.
I bet. Oh, man.
I'm not expecting it to be that miserable, and that's all you do is just study, study, study. So enjoy law school.
There you go. Yeah, that's the way to be. So anyway, just diving back to today's Order in the Court. As I mentioned, Paul is the head blogger. He runs NFLConcussionLitigation.com. Paul, what made you want to cover NFL concussion litigation to begin with?
Well, as a 3rd-year law student, everybody's required, at least at my school, everybody's required to write a law review note. So back in August of last year, I was researching projects, and I came across a blog by a lawyer discussing the first federal class action that was filed against the NFL. I was like, hey, this is a perfect topic. You know, you have 1, class actions, multi-district litigation. 2, you have tort law, personal injury. And 3, most importantly, you're dealing with sports law, a professional sports team or sports league. So I was like, hey, this is great. So I started researching, and then things started to progress in the litigation. And I was like, hey, by the time I publish this thing, it's probably going to be outdated. So I was like, well, what better way to kind of hopefully jump into the sports law arena by launching this website? So I launched NFLConcussionLitigation.com in January. And ever since then, it's just become my little pet project.
That's awesome. So based on the blogs that you've written and perhaps the research that you've conducted, what really sets apart NFL concussion litigation from other legal matters that you commonly see in the sports law realm, such as, let's say, an athlete being charged criminally for, let's say, an assault or maybe weapons possession, or perhaps players signing a contract? What makes NFL concussion litigation separate and distinct from all those other aspects of sports law topics that you commonly see?
Right. I mean, this is the first time that you've had former players try to take on the league, and they're alleging that the NFL caused their later life cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. And so the majority of sports law disputes seem to be labor disputes or, like you said, criminal matters. And it's generally one plaintiff versus one defendant, or you have, like during the lockout last year with Brady. But, I mean, this is a full frontal assault on the NFL and a major threat to both the NFL and the owners.
Right, yeah, exactly. So one of the major headlines that you've covered on your blog, and it's been covered around the, I guess all the news platforms have really covered it, has been this pending concussion litigation that involved the master complaint with the about the 3,000 plus plaintiffs involved. The master complaint was filed back in June, and these are former NFL players or widows of the players who basically point the finger at the NFL for failing to provide information between concussions and potentially long-term brain injuries. So you've been really keeping a closer tab than probably I have in terms of how the concussion litigation in that sense has been progressing. So can you sort of give us where that lawsuit is right now in terms of the master complaint? Where is it legally in terms of I guess the procedural aspect of it, and do you think there are any other details worth mentioning regarding that master complaint and that lawsuit?
Right. So, I mean, honestly, not very much has occurred in regard to the merits. Mm-hmm. However, a lot has occurred procedurally. So over the past year, there have been lawsuits filed all throughout the country, California, Texas, Florida, everywhere. And there's a mechanism in place with the federal courts called multi-district litigation. So what happens is, like I said, whenever there's lawsuits all throughout the country, and there's several parties, several hundred, possibly thousands of parties, the judicial panel on multi-district litigation will designate a single forum where all the pending lawsuits will be transferred and consolidated for pretrial proceedings. So that's what has occurred over the past year. Now all the pending lawsuits are sitting in front of one judge in Philadelphia in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. And with the filing of the master complaint, that was kind of the kickoff of a long litigation battle ahead. So the NFL has until August 30th to file its motion to dismiss. And that's whenever the parties are going to start arguing the main threshold issue, the preemption issue, whether these lawsuits belong in court.
Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say the NFL is arguing that these lawsuits don't belong in court, that they're preempted by the collective bargaining agreement. The players, on the other hand, are saying, hey, these are our rights. These are common law claims. They don't have anything to do with the collective bargaining agreement. And again, the NFL says, hey, this is fundamentally a labor dispute, and this needs to be decided based upon the dispute provisions in the CBA.
Right, yeah. And then my question before I let you continue was just going to be sort of covering how the NFL would approach, but of course you're saying that it all really falls back on the CBA at that point. So another interesting note worth mentioning is in the master complaint, which is also on Paul's website, and you can leave a link down below in the description box so anyone who wants to view that master complaint can see it. But in that master complaint, Riddell, which is the NFL's helmet manufacturer for all 32 NFL teams, they've been named as a defendant along with the NFL in this master complaint. And, this hints at talk about joint and several liability, and a co-defendant is obviously involved here. So in your estimation, do you think Riddell is at fault here? And if so, how liable really is Riddell in this complaint?
Right. Yeah, Riddell has been named as a defendant in some of the lawsuits. Not all of the lawyers decided to sue Riddell, but in the master complaint, Riddell is named. So there, I mean, it's conceivable that Riddell could end up being held liable also, along with the NFL. The plaintiff's theory is that the NFL acted in concert with Riddell, and the NFL acted in concert together to conceal the long-term risk about concussions. Primarily, the claims against Riddell are based on product liability theories. The first being that the helmets were defective, and which I'm not so sure is the best case, and I think that's kind of why some of the lawyers decided not to sue Riddell. I think Riddell, Shut Sports, Zenith, all those guys create a superior helmet, and I don't think they're defective. There's been other litigated cases in the past, and people haven't fared so well against Riddell. However, there's another claim, a failure to warn claim, which may have some merit. The plaintiffs are arguing that Riddell failed to warn the players that a helmet is not going to prevent concussions. I mean, and that's a fact. There is a lot of manufacturers, Riddell, and several companies now that are starting to market their equipment as being able to prevent or reduce concussions. And the science is clear. There is absolutely nothing, whether it's a helmet or some type of mouth guard, there's nothing that's going to prevent concussions. The only way to prevent concussions is by sitting on your couch and not playing a contact sport. So that claim that may have some merit. It's all going to depend on what's found and what Riddell knew and if they were acting in concert with the NFL.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, would you expect with this master complaint? Would you expect a full trial to pan out, or do you suspect maybe a settlement will come out of this?
Well, it really depends on that first threshold issue, the NFL's motion to dismiss. Mm-hmm. If the players are able to go forward on that and say, hey, these lawsuits do belong in court, we have a claim here, then the next stage is going to be discovery. And that's really where the plaintiffs are going to go fishing, so to speak. They're going to hope to find that proverbial smoking gun memo that says, hey, the NFL had this information and they kept it from the players. On the other hand, the NFL is going to be super protective, and they're going to fight any discovery request here on out. And so I think that discovery battle is going to take a long time, and it's really going to depend on what is found during that discovery stage.
And that discovery involves, I'm sure, old memos from, I know that you have some on your website, but I remember when I had a sit down with Alan Schwartz when he came to my school, he showed us old articles actually from Sports Illustrated. I think there was even sort of like a memo from the NFL commissioners meeting back like in the 20s or 30s, sometime around then. But that discovery stuff is really going to take a long time. And believe me, I know that based on civil procedure from the class I took, discovery is not a quick process, of course. Exactly. But another huge topic that we have seen in the NFL has been the Saints Bounty Fund. And it was revealed that many of these Saints defensive players intentionally inflicted injury on opposing players. So, for example, back in 2010, the Saints players intentionally hit quarterback Kurt Warner and concussed him to the extent that he had to leave the game. And, of course, the Saints went on to advance in that series in the playoffs and went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And then we also have audio from former defensive coordinator Greg Williams, which was earlier revealed this year, where he's telling his players before their game against the 49ers in this year's playoffs to kill the head and the body will die. And, of course, this graphic language sort of lends some discussion to talk about concussions. And, obviously there's a reality to the violence of football when you listen to that audio and you listen to the accounts and the facts of the Saints Bounty Fund. So how influential will a situation like the Saints Bounty Fund be for pending NFL concussion litigation or even concussion litigation in the future? Yeah,
I'm not too sure it's going to have that big of an impact. I think what it will do is it'll reiterate the violence of the game. But I mean, that's kind of obvious. I think people are naive to believe that this is only going on in the Saints locker room. I mean, this is language that's probably used in every locker room, and I think it's mere rhetoric as opposed to actually the intent to injure a player.
Right.
However, if somebody can prove that was their intent to actually go above and beyond the inherent risk in a game and try to commit a battery on a person, then yeah, I think Kurt Warner, he would possibly have a claim. But that's very difficult to prove intent beyond just the regular rules and tackling of the game.
Right. Yeah. So now, aside from the NFL, other sports leagues have really taken action and are treating players who who experience concussions when they play their respective sport. So as far as I know the NHL has their own concussion policy with respect to treating players who are concussed while they're on the rink. But we have seen, surprisingly, Major League Baseball take action with concussions. And being an unfortunate Mets fan, we had Jason Bay suffer 2 concussions in the past 2 years, or maybe 3 years since he's been a Met. But we have seen actually that rampant existence of concussions in Major League Baseball, especially since I think 2010. And Major League Baseball responded last year by implementing the 7-day disabled list option to specifically treat players who have concussions. And I believe I looked far and wide, but the number that seems to be out there is that between 15 and 20 players were concussed last year. And, it obviously there's discussion about concussion litigation possibly reaching other leagues. So in applying to what you've covered with the NFL concussion litigation, do you see similar litigation panning out in hockey, baseball, or perhaps another sport where concussions are a norm?
Right. I think it's all going to depend on how this litigation against the NFL turns out. If it's successful, I wouldn't be surprised if some lawyer said, hey, let's try to take on the rest of the leagues. But, I think Major League Baseball, they certainly deserve a standing ovation for what they've done, creating that 7-day DL. And it kind of shows and highlights that concussions are not just limited to football or soccer. They happen in baseball. But for the NHL, I know there's a lot of people that wonder if the NHL is going to be the next target. And actually, the NHL, they were one of the first leagues to implement a concussion protocol. They did this in 1997. Mm-hmm. And so they have they've gotten out in front of this issue, which may cut off any liability, which is a good thing. Another issue is the fighting in hockey. I don't know if that's going to be a major issue during the current collective bargaining agreement or not. Some fans think it's an essential part of the game.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, other fans are kind of over it, and some of the players are over it. But it really is going to depend on how the NFL shakes out, and really how the NFL litigation is distinguishable from the NHL or another league is, and where the NFL litigation has teeth is whenever the NFL voluntarily created the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee. And that's really where these lawsuits are a threat to the NFL, because in 1994, the NFL created this committee, and Commissioner Tagliabue appointed a rheumatologist, which is not a brain surgeon. It's a guy that deals with knees and joints. Appointed him as the head of the committee. And in that 1994 SI article, there was quotes by Dr. Elliot Pellman, who was the head of the committee, and then another independent neurologist. And the independent neurologist said, hey, concussions are serious. They're going to have a lasting impact. And on the other hand, Dr. Elliot Pellman said, concussions, that's just the hazard of the game. And so the NFL had 2 paths to choose, and it looks like they went down the Elliot Pellman path, and they may end up being hit pretty hard for the past 15 years of having the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee in place and allegedly creating science that refuted any link between repeated blows in the head and later life cognitive decline.
Right. So finally, what do you suspect will be the future of NFL concussion litigation? Do you suspect that it will subside, or do you think we're just reaching the tip of the iceberg here?
Yeah, with everything in the law, it depends. And it really is going to depend on how that motion to dismiss turns out. If the motion to dismiss, if the players prevail on that, then I expect a long litigation battle ahead, and it really is also going to depend on how big of a PR hit the NFL feels like it's taking. With more and more tragic stories of players' life after the game suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, and of course, after they pass away, some of them have been diagnosed with CTE. And then in addition to that is the string of suicides that have occurred. I really think, like any company, they're conscious about their public image. And I think this has really been in the headlines a lot lately. So if the players are able to survive that motion to dismiss, the NFL may sit back and reassess their situation and say, hey, let's just cut our losses, get a global settlement in place, and let's move on. But again, it really depends on what is found in that discovery stage.
Yeah, well, of course, the NFL concussion litigation topic is rather ongoing. I think this is going to take quite a while. And like you said, if the dismissal goes through, then no more litigation. But I think whether the case is dismissed or not, certainly the talk of concussions, not only in NFL, but probably throughout all sports leagues, will be an ongoing discussion. And of course, treatment is going to be something that will be taken up with a whole bunch of other leagues. But Paul, great stuff. I commend you highly for taking a stand and discussing this hot topic. And if you want to visit NFL concussion litigation, you can visit Paul in the link below this video. And Paul, thank you for being on Law and Batting Order.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. Before I wrap up today's episode, I wanted to share some special news. If you recall from a few episodes ago, I mentioned that Law and Batting Order has been added to the American Bar Association Journal's blog directory. Every year, the ABA Journal releases a list of the top 100 blogs, and Law and Batting Order is in the running. So in order to be recognized as one of the 100 blogs, I need your help. Visit www.abajournal.com/blogs/blog100_submit and fill out the form where you'll nominate this program. And of course, I thank you all in advance for your loyalty and for voting. Anyway, that's the show. Leave all your comments down below, and be sure to visit Law and Batting Order at lawandbattingorder.com, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Take care, guys.